Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our fifth and final webinar in the Portfolio Analysis Mastermind series. This one is going to talk about using the delayed flip strategy for maximizing your returns. As we've talked about through this course, it's all about how to best reposition your equity to make your equity and your money work for you. So before we get into details, we will be going through some numbers, some taxes. We are not your CPA. We are not lawyers, so make sure you go out there and talk to your professionals to make sure that you're doing the right move for you, your family, and your portfolio. And there's really three main things we'll cover in today's agenda. And the first one is looking at the current state of the market, yourself, and your rental property. Is your rental property still a good investment? A lot of times the answer is surprising. Second, there are some unique aspects to selling a rental property that most people don't have when they go out there and sell their primary, namely taxes and tenants, the two T's. We will talk about that, and this is especially applicable to people with a lot of like single family rentals, homes, condos, townhomes, where they're not necessarily always an investment property. And then the third thing is we're actually going to go through and talk about the delayed flip strategy and how to use it to maximize return, and then go and talk about a unique program we have called the fixed enlist program, which helps you maximize your selling dollar while minimizing the stress of selling. So our experts here, my name is Chris Lopez. I'm the host of here and the founder of Envision Advisors. And then our first panelist is Lauren Valinotti with Envision. Lauren, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me today.
And of course, we got Jenny Bayless back. Many of you know. Jenny, how are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Really good. Another Envision team member is Stacy Rosansky. Stacy, glad to have you on here.
Happy to be here.
And last but not least is Aaron Klingscales, who's our financial
good morning,
expert.
good
What's up, Aaron? So as we go through this PowerPoint, you can download this in the student resource sections when we're over, but definitely feel free to ask questions. We tried to pack a lot of content into here and want questions. So as I mentioned, this is our fifth webinar. And an important thing to do is we're actually going to be using some more Property Llama screenshots in here. If you want to go in there and evaluate your rental to see if it's a good rental, not a good rental, what to do with it, make sure you have it plugged into the Property Llama account. We have a lot of features in there, help you analyze it now, and we're rolling out more that'll do a lot more of the advanced analyses, some that we're actually going to be talking about today. And of course, if you need help interpreting what to do with your property or your portfolio, schedule a free 30-minute portfolio analysis session with us. You can scan the QR code, and maybe, Aaron, if you can drop that scheduling link in the chat box, people can schedule on there. If you go there and schedule it, it'll come to me, Jenny, or Aaron. We'll sit down, review your portfolio, and also look at some of your properties to see if selling and reinvesting is the best strategy for you. All right, so moving into the first segment on here, is your rental a good investment? So we can't just look at your rental isolated. We have to put in the context with other things. What is the current market doing? What's best for you, and what's the performance of your property? Because there are two issues real estate investors often face. The first is you're using outdated information. Real estate is not an efficient market. It's sometimes hard to find information. And a lot of us have biases to, I bought this property 7 years ago, and we're very anchored to the numbers of when we bought it. That's not the best way to look at it. The second is there are some very nuanced strategies to go out there and build wealth in real estate. And the thought process of buy a property, pay it off, and keep it, while it's a good strategy and will make you a lot of cash flow, it's going to leave a lot of wealth creation on the table for you. And for majority of investors out there, that is not the best strategy once we talk about their goals and situation. So with those two things in mind, there's really four things that we want to go through and help you highlight. One is, what is your goals and situation? The second is market conditions, both nationally and locally. Like interest rates are interest rates, that's national. But trends we see here in Denver are different than we see trends in Washington, D.C. or Fredericksburg, Virginia. Third is the current performance of your rental. And the fourth is in current investment opportunities. Because if your current rental is not a great one, great, that might mean it's a great time to sell, but we want to make sure you can go out there and invest in something that's worth the hassle and expense of selling and is going to match your return expectations and your goals. So we're going to go through the 4 areas here. And goals and situations. And there's really 3 things I'd break down into here. And Jenny, this is something that, you and I talk about a lot with clients. It's really about what investing phase are you in or the client in? Can you give us an overview on this?
Yeah, so we speak with a lot of different clients that are in a lot of different positions. So we have some that have been investing for decades and they're nearing retirement, and they have a whole swath of properties. Some are easy, some are not. So we take a look at some of the more intrinsic type nuances to those properties, and then we have some people that are fresh right out of college and they're looking to start their real estate portfolio. So they're in the accumulation phase. So it's different strategies for each person that we look at, and it all depends on what part of their life they're in, what their goals are. Some people don't want to have, an empire of rental properties. They want it as part of a diversified retirement plan. So maybe that only requires a couple of properties to meet their goals. So it's all about tailoring where you're at in your phase of life and investing.
Yeah, and that's so well said. And that really goes out to like this next section of, what's the time and level of involvement you want to be in. As people go through different phases in their life, not just if they're in accumulation or their wealth phase, but just their stage in life. You may have more time and more bandwidth to invest, and others you may not. Like literally 5 minutes before we went live, Lauren's on the phone, I think with her nanny or mother, someone out there trying to get a car seat situation figured out because there's a car seat switcheroo. Lauren has a family, young kids, and I mean, you're busy raising your family, right?
I actually had a client text me last night, and he was just wanting to acquire another property for next year in the mountains. And he's like, and by the way, I need to figure, and he's young. Gosh, I mean, he's bought 3 properties with me in the last year and a half. He's a sales rep, and I think he's got to be like 28, 30. And he's like, I need to figure out how I can simplify. It's already too much. I mean, he's bankrolling in sales. He's got a great opportunity in front of him. He understands the importance of investing in real estate. But he's already recognizing that his bandwidth and energy, using it on managing his rentals, is not the best use of his time.
Yep.
And, so it's not necessarily all just about age and what your bandwidth is. It's also just to, where you're going to get the best return of your time between your job and your rentals too.
Yeah, that's so well said.
And that's why we always start with this as our number one, because it's everyone's favorite answer when you're, everybody wants the best rental property, but it's always going to be, it depends.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'm 40 now. I've got 2 young kids, and I mean, 10 years ago, I was like, hell yeah, let's go out there. I was putting flooring in and painting and redoing patios and doing this stuff. I mean, now, like, I can barely find the time or energy to go out, like, lube my hinges around the house. I'm like, honey, call the handyman. Like, I can't deal with this. Like, I'm not in the phase of my life I want to deal with it. And so I think it's very important for everyone to like really have a real conversation with themselves and also like their partner or their spouse as to, hey, what's best for you, the family, the partnership. And the other thing I'm talking here is your risk tolerance. And this is very subjective. Like I have I'd say a journey more higher risk tolerance than a lot of people, but that's me. Other people, if they're highly leveraged, they don't sleep at night. Great. Well, what's appropriate for you. So it's identifying, hey, what your risk tolerance is. And it's best to keep in mind, there's no right or wrong answer. Now, if you go with Stacy said, hey, the spreadsheet says do this, great. That's what the spreadsheet does for pure modeling, but that is not real life, and you have to deal with it and sleep with it. So the second thing to look at is what is going on with the market. So before we talk about where we are, let's have a little historical context, talk about where we've been. Jenny, if you could sum up the last 10 years in a sentence or two, what's happened the last 10 years around the Front Range?
Upward trajectory, I think, would be the best way to summarize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a
Mhm.
rocket ship. I mean, this shows like it's very interesting now looking back, like where my mouse is in 2006, 2007. That was the peak then. And then that massive crash. I mean, that was a 25%, 25% crash here the next couple years. And then you look at this huge like mountain we just climbed, like we just did. This is almost a rocket ship. That was a trajectory where the last 15 years, about the last 15 years, give or take a little bit, you just had huge appreciation gains, huge rental gains. Everyone's been just a brilliant investor. We just kind of like the trend was in our favor. But now with, what's going on in the market, things are changing. You can see here, hey, we might see some price softness. Some areas will slow down, some will stay flat, some continue to gain, but this huge trajectory, that's over. Now, the current market, this slide is going to be surprising a lot of people because this shows, where the market is. And this is a measure of a couple metrics that really shows, hey, we're in a buyer's market, meaning buyers are in favor. If we're in a balanced market, meaning buyers and sellers are equally, on the same footing, or are we in a seller's market? Believe it or not, we're still in the seller's market. Now, this dot may be a little higher up here, but we're still in the seller's market range. Like, Lauren, you're out there. I mean, you're selling listings, you're buying properties. Give kind of like the weird vibe right now in the market. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think this is a great slide to kind of put it into perspective on where the market's at. What the media is telling us right now, and all the headlines, they feed off of fear. And we've been in this huge seller market. So it's a great headline to catch, people's attention is that, we're in this huge softening in the marketplace. And this slide really highlights it great of just really showing you, where we are at. I mean, in 2008, you can see where it went into a little bit of above, of a balanced market. And so what we're seeing in today is, we're still lack of supply. I mean, our market is greatly dependent upon supply and demand. Right now where we're in a natural, seasonality trend. I mean, it's normal in this time of year, to see sales dip down.
Yep.
Less sellers want to deal with the hassle of selling, and less buyers want to go out and actually move during the holidays. And so, yes, there is absolutely more inventory of today than what we saw the previous year. But again, too, just all putting into perspective of just, how little of inventory, and not only how little inventory we had, but how so many more buyers we had in the market. I mean, they were just giving away money for like free, last year with our interest rates. So our clients, it's been great, in my opinion, for my sellers and for my buyers. For my buyers, there's a little bit more inventory to go look at, and they're able to take a breather and actually go out there and really make a conscious, choice of what they want to go through, and not feeling rushed. And
Yep.
And then also to, being able to actually like write really strong offers, to the sellers. And with the sellers too, is what we're seeing is that majority of our transactions are going through now. The financing is all settled, and, the buyers that are presenting offers to the sellers, these are buyers that have had the chance to think everything through. They really know what they want. When the interest rates turned at the very beginning, we did see a lot of contracts, terminate just because of financing, is flip-flopping back and forth. You were pre-approved for one amount a week ago, and now all of a sudden you're, drastically approved for less because of the interest rate.
But that whiplash now, I think a lot of it is just that whiplash. We were like that rocket ship, especially the last year and a half, 2 years ago. It was just a rocket ship with gasoline dumping on there. The things have definitely slowed, but like reality is we're still in the seller's market. It may change over the next year or so, but you can see like it does not move fast. But we're basically at like 2019 levels.
And also too, we're, even with the sellers, I mean, we're, again, the supply and demand, that's what's going to control the prices. And we have all of these sellers that are locked into these ridiculous, amazing interest rates. So they're not really necessarily like motivated right now to put their house on the market. Was going to continually increase the issue with the, supply. So I just don't really expect this huge wave of supply to hit the market to start, shifting around actual prices.
Yeah, and I mean that's very well said. And if you guys want a bunch of details, like on all the estimated stuff, let us know. We could be hour-long webinars that just focus on data and metrics. We won't dive into that here, but here's the punchline: we're not going off a cliff, but the party is over. Like the huge appreciation gains we've seen, we're not going to see those anymore. It's going to be probably for the next year or two, a couple years, relatively modest to flat gains. Some areas we might see some softening and negative, but it'll be from nothing crazy in either direction. And rental rate increases. The rate at rental rates are going up are decreasing as well, but they're still increasing. So another thing, and this is just really for Denver landlords, so Denver County and the city of Denver, not necessarily the Denver Metro, but the Denver County, is that starting in January 2023, they are rolling out a new Denver rental licensing. You have a property in Denver, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, Stacy. So what's the speed on that, or the pulse on that right now? Have you started it?
I have not.
Okay, you're like most landlords.
Yeah. Well, I just have a single family, so it's not for single units. It starts in January 2024.
Yep.
So for multis, it's 2023. Chris and Eric did a whole webinar on it already that you can check out, but it's, there's a lot. You have to pass an inspection process, and there's a lot of little items that they're just wanting to make sure that properties are in, up to standards and in good shape, safe,
Yep.
for people to be living in.
And so, overall, it's not a huge deal or a big deal, but it's one more thing to deal with. And for a lot of investors, some who've had a great run and maybe deferred maintenance or stuff on properties, like, I need to get that fixed. Might be just worthwhile to sell and move on. And some people, hey, anytime they have to deal with licensing stuff, it's just a pain in the butt they don't want to deal with. Fine, we'll realize that is coming. And if you already have a multifamily, it's here in like 3 weeks. So keep that in mind, because that's another reason why, hey, you start factoring in the stuff. That's the current market outlook. Like nothing dramatic is going on, but there's not, again, this huge run up is going to be over now. So what do you want to do? Really good time potentially readjust and rebalance your portfolio. So let's move on to this third bucket here. And this is your rental still a good investment? So what you need to do is evaluate the current performance of your rental. And Jenny, I mean, we talk about this a lot with our analysis sessions. Like, why are we emphasizing current so much?
Yeah, the common theme that we've been seeing is that the price increases that Chris has been talking about, that we've been seeing over the last decade or so, are at a faster rate than the rental rate increases. So as a result, it's pulling down your property's performance in today's numbers, utilizing the equity that you've gained over the past, several years, in comparison to what you're getting for rent. So that's why it's most important to constantly reevaluate the current performance of your property.
And we see a lot of people like, oh, I bought this property, 9 years ago. I got it for so cheap, a $300,000 house or $200,000 house. Great. Well, that was $200,000 and rents were this. Well, now prices have tripled and rents have gone up 40%. Well, it kind of throws out the balance. And every time you put a new tenant on the property or do a move on there, you're essentially repurchasing the property. So a great way to look at the current performance is to also, hey, if I were to buy this as a property today, would it still be a good rental? And a lot of times it's not. So the easy way is to just give an example property here. And this is like really, really representative of what we see around Denver, Northern Colorado, Colorado Springs, the whole Front Range. And, what we're seeing here is some that bought our property 6, 7, 8 years ago. Now the property is worth $600,000 plus, but they have like $400,000 in equity. That's that huge run up in price appreciation along some debt pay down. Now this huge equity position. And this is where you have to measure, how's it currently doing? Well, this is where return on equity comes into play. Like, you're not just looking, oh, I put $100,000 down this property. Yeah, you did that 10 years ago, but now you have $400,000. And I view that as like money in my real estate piggy bank. Like, it's a little hard to get out. I may have to break the piggy bank, so to speak. Like, it's hard to pull the money out, but it's not like cash in the bank or, you know, dividends you get in your stock account where it just is automatically liquid. You go in there and do this. It takes effort to pull that money out. But that money or equity is the true way to look at the performance of the property. And so this property is about a 9% return. So that's saying all the ways you make money in the property based on the amount of equity in there, you're making about 9%, which for a lot of landlords, myself included, is not an exciting number to me, because that's basically about the historic returns of the stock market. And if I have to deal with tenants and toilets and liability and the headaches of a property, I want to make better money than I can do by just, you know, sitting on my butt in my computer and doing a couple trades online. And a lot of landlords feel the same way. So they want to see a higher return equity. And a lot of times when you go out there and buy a rental, you'll be at between 15 or 30% on a new rental or greater. So that's, you know, a lot higher than stock market return. The other thing we look at is the cap rate. I won't go into all what that is exactly, but it's just a way to help measure the performance of a rental. So some really good and some rough rules of thumb is that if your cap rate is below 4%, and that's with a property manager, like, you know, you hire a property manager, or, you know, below about 5% if you self-manage, a lot of times it's a poor rental in today's market, meaning that, like, yeah, it's not a great rental. If you're buy it today, it'll probably be a pretty negative cash flowing property. So we could spend a lot talking about this. And if you've been on the other PAM series, you know, we spent, 3 hours going in depth about this. So you know those numbers on there. But the punchline here is the better use of the equity or money in this property is to sell the property and reinvest it. Not necessarily refinance it because it's such a low cap rate. If the cap rate's higher, refinance it. But a lot of times it makes sense to sell and then reinvest. And this is a very, very common example of what we see out here around town. An 8 to 10% return equity and a 2.5 to 4% cap rate is pretty common. All right, so the fourth option on here, what are the current investments? Where can you put your money? First option to look at is, can you buy a better rental property? With the emphasis being on a better rental. You can't, you don't want to trade for something that's already a poor performing property for a better one. It has to be a better rental. But keep in mind now, with higher interest rates, cash flow is tougher with higher interest rates. So we're modeling right now, a lot of times putting down 35% for a property, or doing doing a creative strategy, like a room by room or Airbnb, Lauren.
Yep.
Yeah. Because we're seeing those can still cash flow. But again, that's if you want to put the time into managing an Airbnb or a room by room rental. Now, another potential great benefit for buying a rental is there's some potential huge tax benefits by deferring, capital gains taxes via 1031 exchange. And we'll talk more about that, but understand that, you can potentially not pay tax when you sell the property. But in the current marketplace, there are some buying opportunities. And if you want to see them, like a couple months ago, we reactivated our deals list because last couple of years, there were so many buyers that, there weren't a whole lot of deals. Well, now the market's shifting. We're out there finding good deals. So if you want to get on that list, click that link or do the QR code or email us. We'll put you on there. Other options that are popular right now are passive investments. These are like real estate funds or syndications. Not REITs per se, but more like the private funds that, a lot of multifamily syndicators out there, or stuff that Lon Walsh and Iron Capital are doing. Those can be attractive investments, but they usually don't have the tax savings when you sell the property. And of course, other investments. You can put in the stock market. You can invest in your business or another business, buy a second home or vacation. I mean, your situation best, but the important thing here is to get this data current. Look at your goals, look at the market, look at your rental, and then see, hey, if I did all this, where can I put the money? If you don't have a better investment, then you probably shouldn't sell or refinance. But if you look, there's usually a lot of investments people are finding. So as we get out of here, actually, on this slide, anything else you guys want to throw into here? I mean, this can go down a rabbit's hole, but okay. So here's just a couple examples I'm going to show you. And this is a couple years ago, but common of what you see here. That blue line is like the annual return that a lot of times people were seeing in these high appreciation markets. You see the first 3-4 years here, 90%, 70%, 40% returns. But as the appreciation really peaked, the returns started leveling off here to around the stock market, which is basically a visual graph of that property showed a few slides ago. So a lot of the returns were front loaded, and now the returns will be relatively flat if you don't reposition the equity or reposition the property. And here's a very high level conceptual example. Like this bottom pale dotted line is if you kept the rental or invest in the stock market. So you can see, yeah, you're making money. This green line is you go out there and you remove, buy another property, reinvest it. Man, your returns go up a lot. And then this shows some other models. If down the road you buy another property or you reinvest again, you can see you can get those returns a lot higher. So there's nothing wrong with doing nothing or just leaving the property paid off if it's okay with your investment goals. But if you want to get higher returns, which a lot of our clients still do, you need to go out there and refinance or sell and reinvest to go out there and start getting higher and higher returns. All right. So talking about some unique aspects of selling a rental. And this is really comes down to taxes and tenants. Because there's, I'd say I put selling a property as like 3 buckets. For a lot of people out there, there's traditional retail buyers. I mean, Stacy, how would you describe just traditional retail seller and a retail buyer? Most common example out there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's just someone goes out there and, hey, someone wants to sell their home and trade up, or they're moving from, here to Atlanta. They got to sell a property, relatively easy and straightforward. And that's, 80-90% of the market. A lot less considerations. The other end of the spectrum is like, true investment properties, like 10-unit multifamily buildings, just, investments that people don't live in. And that is where, hey, you're always going to sell it from an investor to an investor. Now, for a lot of the properties we're seeing here along the Front Range, there's this kind of like messy in the middle type option where it's a rental now, like a single family rental. Like, you own a single family rental in Barnum, right, Lauren?
Yes.
So very common example. In Barnum, other parts of town, it's a single family rental that would make a great home for someone. Now, when it goes time to sell it, the best case is often not selling to investor, but selling to an owner occupant.
Yes.
And so that transition right there of, hey, how do we take a rental that's really no longer a great rental, but now an owner occupant? What do we look at? And this is where that tax and tenants come into play. So, Jenny, talk to us about taxes.
Yeah. So kind of the punchline on that is if you sell your property, there's a very good chance that you're going to have to pay taxes. However, there's a couple of exceptions to this rule, depending on, the circumstances surrounding your sale. So, for example, if it's your primary residence, there's a possibility that you would qualify for a Section 121 exclusion. So talk to your tax advisor on that. So we're not going to get into the weeds on that, but just something to consider. If you're selling an investment property, there's a couple of methods that you could use. One being a 1031 exchange, which doesn't preclude you from having to pay taxes. It's merely a deferral of having to pay taxes. So again, speak with your tax advisor on that. But a lot of people will do that and they'll trade up into a bigger and better property, keep trading and trading and trading. And then when you pass away, you're able to give it to your heirs at the stepped up basis is kind of the summary of that. But then another option that you might have would be to sell and pay the capital gains tax and the depreciation recapture. But you would be able to then reinvest that money into a property that you could perhaps do a cost segregation study to not, one for one eliminate any taxes that are due, but it would offset that tax implication of the sale. And then I know Lon and Chris did a fantastic webinar of when it does make sense to pay your cap gains on a sale. So there's no one size fits all. Again, it depends on your circumstances, but there are definitely options out there.
Yeah, and that was a great overview, Jenny. And the key point here is like you need to spend some time to understand, what the options are, and also talk to your CPA or tax professional about it. And we can often help you, like, give you the big picture, give you some ideas, what we see, and give you some like basic examples. but you got to go out there and then figure out for yourself and talk to your tax professional. And they're, throughout the market, there's a lot of times like a very favored strategy. And for the last 10 years is always sell and do a 1031 exchange. Always made the most sense, or usually made the most sense. And as Jenny mentioned, there are cases where it makes sense now to sell and pay the capital gains and move the money elsewhere. So there's a lot of factors on it. It's a very multi-dimensional thing to look at, but you want to spend some time on here because there can be significant tax consequences on here, which will have an impact on your overall return. So the second T is tenants. Stacy, talk to us about this.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most important things when evaluating selling your investment property, which is most likely going to be tenant occupied. But if it is what we're talking about, that kind of property that could be an investment property, could be an owner occupied property, that really will, removing those tenants will really open up your buyer pool. So that's, we would always advise that you figure out a way to work with your tenants, when you're thinking about selling, structuring it so that it times with their leases, ending, or working with them to figure out, the best way to maximize your return will be to open up, that it's you can sell your home to either another investor or an owner occupant. And then just some of the things, if that's not a possibility for when you're selling, we really want to work with our tenants to make sure that they're happy, because they could potentially derail a sale of the house. So if you're in a scenario where, the lease has to stay in place, we can help advise on what are the best practices when working with tenants and keeping them happy during the sales process, because, it can be annoying to them and there's some inconveniences.
Oh yeah. I mean, Lauren, you sold the property with a tenant in there, I think, for a night or two. The landlord put them up in a hotel just so we could do showings, right?
Yeah. So, I've, been out shopping with buyers on tenant occupied properties, and it's just sitting on the market, and the house is in pretty good condition. And I'll call the listing agent and find out, what's been going on with the property. Why has it been sitting this long? And they're like, oh, well, the tenant wouldn't allow any showings. And so, as we all know, the more buyers that you have walk the property, the more likely you're going to get that bidding and be able to get top dollar for your property. So working with a listing agent that understands the uniqueness of selling with a tenant is super important. That way we can advise the landlord of, how to get the tenant on your side, make them feel like they're a part of the process, communicate to them, we know that this is disrupting their lives, and repaying them in some sort of way, because they're doing you a favor at the end of the day, and you're disrupting their lives. So it can be as easy as putting them up in a hotel for the weekend, giving them gift cards, reducing their rent, just different scenarios like that. That way you just don't look like this, greedy landlord and not thinking about what their family is going through too.
And the other thing is also it's not necessarily the end of the world if you can't get a tenant out of a property. There are, still ways where you can time it that the property could be sold to an owner occupant that can move in within 60 days after closing. So, again, just making sure you're aware of all the options when you're selling that.
Yeah. Timing the leases is super important. So if you want to make sure that you're allowing the buyer pool of owner occs to be able to purchase a property along with an investor, an owner occupant is going to need to meet the lender requirements, which means that they need to occupy the home within 60 days of purchasing the home. So making sure you're timing the listing to go on the market to where, it's 30 days, to be able to sell the property, and then 60 days for that lease to end is the maximum amount of time. So you need to time it 3 months out minimum. Of when you can put that in the market to where an owner occupant can buy the property too.
And as you guys put on, there's a lot of nuances there. You mentioned some 30-day, 60-day windows, and we don't expect our average client investor to know those rules, but those are considerations, because like what you guys are describing, like, oh wow, how come this property is sitting on there So, hey, if you're on the buyer's agent on the buy side, those are great properties to look at because, a lot of owner occupants can't get into it or they can't, actually close a loan on there.
Right.
Great potential for investor.
Mhm.
But if you're the one selling the property, well, you're kind of not setting yourself up for success.
Mhm.
And so it always comes down to like, I think it just comes down to like kind of sales 101. Who is the customer? What's the best use of the property? Always ask yourself that. And for a lot of these properties, these single family homes, the best buyer is an owner occupant. Young, someone starting out, a family, someone just wants to live there and they don't care about real estate investing. And so we're actually transitioning from an investment to an owner occ property. And that's the magic part. And that's something that takes a lot of finesse and you have to take into these considerations.
And one thing, just, we talk about the single families, for a multifamily, the other best scenario is going to be to where at least one of the units is going to be vacant. And that way that opens up the pool to a house hacker also.
Yep.
So it can be an investor, but somebody who wants to own or occupy one unit and then rent out the other. So at least ensuring that when you're doing a multifamily that you're timing it with one of the leases to get your best return.
Exactly. And don't worry about getting on those details about tenants and taxes. That's stuff that we sit down and talk with our clients about and help guide you. We just want to point out, hey, here's a landscape. Here are some best practices, but also, hey, there are some brick walls you may run into.
Why it's super important to be, anyone can sell not anyone can sell a house, but when you're picking your real estate team to sell an investment property, ensuring that you're interviewing and making sure that your listing agent understands the complexities of it with the taxes, and they're advising you through, the different strategies to making sure that they're getting the best return.
Yeah. And this brings us to kind of the next part, like we gave the overview and hey, here's considerations, but if the investor's going to sell it, what do we want? We all want top dollar. Like, hey, let's get the most money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, buy something, sell for higher, it's more profit you make. And so want to move into like a really good strategy right now, which is what we call the delayed flip strategy. And this is using our fixed and list program. And so, the typical flip when people think about a flip is, hey, I buy a property today. I'm going to start rehabbing it, tomorrow, next couple of days, and hopefully next month, a couple months, it'll be a new property and I can sell the next few months. That's a flip. That's a business. Now, what we're talking about is kind of the same strategy where we improve the property, but you buy it, then you have it as a rental for 2, 3, 4, 10, 12 years, and then go in there and fix it up so it's desirable to an owner occupant. So we're actually, rather than doing the flip in 90 days, we're doing over, 9 years, whatever your time frame is. And so this is where the fixed list program, and this is something that Lauren, you specialize in, and you've really done a great job developing it, really comes into play. So walk us through what it is and what the program is.
Yeah. So the fix and list is just going into your home and working with the sellers to help maximize their returns whenever they go to sell. And, there's 3 options of what we're looking at when we're looking at the property. Is we're going to show you an option of a as is. We're going to show you what it would sell for with a light refresh. Typically it's going to be about $5,000 to $15,000 in the improvements. Typically that's going to be about a 1-month turn time. And the third one's going to be a full remodel. We're giving a very generous low amount of what that would look like of $30,000 plus, and with the turn time of 3 to 6 months. And the point here is for any dollar that's spent, we're aiming that the seller's going to at least get a $2 return. And here is, at the end of the day, we want the property to shine. The end user that's going to purchase the property, they are buying a used property, but they want to go in there and they want to feel like it's brand new, no one's living there, and reduce any more like time and energy. All they want to think about is bringing their stuff over, moving in, and starting to create memories in the home. So just going in and giving the house, as much new life to it is really going to get the house, to market properly. It's going to sell quicker. It's going to sell for more, and it's going to put more, money into, the seller's pocket. And at the end of the day, it's just really little things that we can go in and do that can really make a really big difference and can help the property shine.
Yeah. And again, this is where having like an expert in there becomes so important, because it's, hey, what's the neighborhood? What's going on? You know, how close is it to this busy street? Or, hey, what conditions these properties are selling for? It's a very multi-dimensional approach. And that's something that, you know, this fixed list program does. It runs through these 3 options in context with, hey, what's going on in that micro market of that neighborhood, of that street, and what else is trading there.
And like in that specific time, you know, because we're helping our clients, you know, purchase a rental property. But the cosmetic updates that you're going to get, that you're going to put in to get top dollar in rents, isn't necessarily what you want to do to get top dollar whenever you sell.
That's such a great point.
Trends change. And at the end of the day is, you know, as much as you think you're going to find the best renters in there, wear and tear happens. So you can put brand new cabinets in it right whenever you turn into a rental, but things just chip, and it just does show some sort of like age and damage to it. And, you know, going in and repainting, you know, cabinets again, you know, you're just not going to get that same refresh look to get you top dollar. So it makes way more sense when you buy the rental, paint the cabinets, keep them as is if they work. And then when you go to sell, do that delayed flip strategy and that fix and list program. That's when you go and you put the brand new cabinets in. And that's where you're going to see a way larger return.
Yeah, and I think,
and I mean, one thing that oh, go ahead, Jenny.
I was just going to piggyback off of what Chris said regarding the neighborhood. For example, we did one down in Colorado Springs where all that they needed to do was really just do paint, carpet, and just really minor curb appeal items. And I knew that it was going to be the best house in the neighborhood. And sure enough, that's, you know, kind of how the price worked out. But, you know, there wasn't a point to putting granite countertops in because no other home in that neighborhood had granite countertops. So I think it's just really important to really align with an agent that doesn't, you know, want you to over improve the property as well.
Yeah. And I mean, something that just to put out here is, I know we talked in previous slide about selling with a tenant, without a tenant. Obviously, this is without the tenant, because you're in there doing work or whatever, like that's it's vacant. And usually, to reemphasize, that's the best way to sell a property is vacant, and then go in there and do the sell as is, light refresh, or full remodel. And then, Lauren, here is just a case study from one of the properties you did in the Corey Merrill neighborhood. Walk us through the 3 options here from a high level.
Yeah. So originally this home was listed for, it started out being listed for $675, and they did multiple price reductions, and it was listed at $550. It still wasn't moving. That's whenever the seller reached out to us after their contract ended.
And that was with the previous agent.
Then
correct? They call you.
And they reached out to us. After their contract ended. And so we gave them 3 different options. It was on a busier street. You know, the agent really wasn't in tune with the neighborhood, and she did more brand new builds than resell, this agent. So we gave them 3 different options here. And as is would be at $525. And if we did a light upgrades, we were saying that we could list it for $575. And if we did a full remodel, it'd be $625. Because of our clients, just like timing and on what they were wanting to do also, and just with the amount of, you know, funds that they had on hand, they decided to opt for option number 2 with the light updates. So we general contracted the whole entire thing. We brought in the contractors and advised them on the different areas to add value. So we focused mostly on the kitchen, the bathrooms, paint, and redoing the floors. And so they ended up spending, you know, a little over $8,300, and they ended up selling for $575. They got a cash offer, netting them $66,000, $700, excuse me. And so this is just like one great example. I mean, that's a huge return right there for them.
And I want to highlight on here, because it's not just the return, because I mean, look in this, I guess, second column here. The light as is was just under $10,000.
Yeah, we have a couple of pictures too on the
but
next slide.
The remodel was $65,000
Yeah.
estimated.
Mm-hmm.
And so that full remodel, while it would sell for more, it would take more time and net you a few dollars less.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Like the sweet spot for, hey, where's that? Hey, spend $1, we want to get $2 back. Great. Well, they spent $1 and got what, $5 back or so, or $4 back over that change on there. So it's find that sweet spot in terms of like what the market will bear and also what you want to deal with. Because the full remodel, a lot more work.
Yeah, and they had 4 kids too, so
Oh yeah, no.
living through a remodel was not an option for them.
And then here's some photos, right, Lauren?
Yep. Yeah.
So left is before, right is after, obviously.
Yeah, so just, there was some oak still left in the house, so we were able to paint the doors with new hardware. We kept the original cabinets, and we just did a new fresh backsplash on it. There was some carpentry work that kind of dated a little bit. We took that out, kind of modernized it. They had an old, double oven, in the kitchen. So we were able to take that double oven out, add an actual storage in there for them, and then put a quartz countertop. And then we also updated the primary bathroom with new tile. We reglazed the bathtub, new fixtures, hardware in there, and then also just repainted the house. And then we did staging. We brought in some new staging just to kind of complement the house a little bit better, and redid the floors.
So you can see there, going back again, that was that light updates. Spend just under $10,000, and that was a sweet spot for money and time invested to maximize the return and minimize the headache. And that's always the goal.
Yep. And another thing just to highlight too for our fix and list program is that something that our team handles directly. So Stacy and I, we would be your point of contacts as your general contractors. These are vendors that we work exclusively with. They give us amazing prices. They're very trustworthy. There's plenty of times where my clients are saying, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and I think we need to upgrade this electrical. And, they're like, no, everything's passing code. It's completely fine. So they're just not out there to make a quick buck. These are business partners with us.
Well, also, a big difference too is, we're, we as agents are big points of business for them. Like we use them a lot. So they really keep us happy because easy to work with. We have great clients, great projects, and it's a consistent flow where, hey, if you're out there on your own, you're a one-off client. You're just, we get a lot of times our phone calls get picked up first and we get prioritized, to put it simply.
Absolutely.
And this strategy, I think, is really important to look into in a market like we're in right now, because if we're starting to see houses sit for longer or more inventory where buyers have more choices, like how are you going to make your property stand out to sell quicker, to make the process just that much easier.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
So wrapping up here to just move on to the conclusion. And of course, if you have any questions, start putting them in the chat box there. But really, it's what Stacy just said. Like, all the market conditions in there, the macro stuff, the national level, going from, economic data and interest rates to what's happened here locally last 15 years, the current landscape, to where a lot of people bought rentals that were great 10 years ago, but now they're better used for owner occupants. And all this leads to a very, very great strategy right now that's very common. So I'm trying to say is that delayed flip, because it's going to maximize the dollar and put your money to best use, and also put the home to its best use as well. And as we've mentioned on there, this is a lot to coordinate here, and we're often the quarterbacks of it. Like we give you the heads up on, hey, here's tax stuff to be, heads up about. Go talk to your CPA. Oh, you need a CPA? Here's a couple of CPAs we work with. P.S. Work with a CPA that knows real estate. Very, very important. And then going out there and quarterbacking it. Hey, how do we get the best dollar for it? And hey, here are some ideas we can go out there and invest. And depending on your situation, it might be, hey, buy another property here in Denver Metro. It might be go down to Pueblo where prices are less expensive and a slightly better yield. It might be, what? We're moving out of Denver a couple of years. We're moving to the South or to Phoenix. We want to start moving stuff down there. Great. We'll help you time stuff up, finance if you need to. Oh, you move to a passive investment. Like, we'll do our best to help kind of set you up for success and help you figure out the best case for your property, and also what's the best use for putting that money or equity to work. Like, that's our goal here. So obviously, I very much want to promote Envision Advisors here. I think this is a great niche that we have carved out. It took me a couple years to really understand and appreciate it, because there's that owner occupant sale. Then there's like the more traditional investment to investment sale, which is more like, commercial brokerage. And then there's this this rental to owner occupant. And that is a messy process, but we have figured out a lot of the key steps and have it pretty well dialed in, like where I feel very confident about it. So if anyone out there has questions or needs help with this, let us know. Love to chat with you about it. A lot of the stuff we're using in Property Llama helps us figure out the best case on the property. So make sure your properties are plugged into there. And then, I mean, any kind of final thoughts or things that Stacy, Lauren, Jenny, Aaron, you guys want to share or point out? We covered a lot in here, so I feel like there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, definitely a lot of good information here. One thing that I would add to you is part of it is the initial discovery. One of the biggest aha moments I have within the portfolio analysis session is realizing what their actual statistics are for their portfolio and for their individual properties. Most people don't spend the time to put a bunch of information into a series of different spreadsheets, but the Property Llama software allows you to not only input your information very quickly, but it gives it to us in a very clean way to kind of truly understand how you're currently positioned. And then once we have a good clarity on your goals, then we can help you through the remaining levels of this process that we've kind of gone through today.
Yeah, very well said. Awesome. Well, I think we got all the questions answered in the chat box there. This was a great one. So Aaron, Jenny, Lauren, Stacy, thank you. Great information, great knowledge on here, and happy to answer any questions people have about the program, where to put the money, using Property Llama, anything, reach out to us. We are here to help you out. All right. Have a great day, everyone.